Okay, so a couple days ago, someone asked me on my latest YouTube video how I set up Obsidian for kind of my learning habits and how do I configure the plugins I use and how do I kind of just optimize my setup for it to be ideal. And instead of trying to like just do a write-up guide, I thought it would be easier if I actually just demonstrated by creating a new vault and kind of showcasing my entire process. So I'm going to assume you've never used Obsidian before, so you're setting up Obsidian for the first time. So I'm going to kind of walk through the entire process of when you first downloaded Obsidian, all the way up to having at least a functional start to your vault. When you first open Obsidian, you're going to be greeted by this, create a new vault uh, indication. So you can just click create. We'll just pick a name for the vault. I'm just going to call this example vault. And then you also need to set a location for the vault. Now, typically people will either set it to somewhere on their home directory or they'll save it to their documents folder. I am going to recommend saving it to the documents folder just because that makes it easier for you when you're actually setting up your vault. Once you have it set up, you have your name selected, and you have your new vault created, you can just click Create. It's then going to open up the Obsidian window. And this is what Obsidian looks like when you first set it up. You're going to notice that it just says welcome. This is your new vault. Make a note of something, create a link, or try the importer. The importer is actually really important because if you have notes from, let's say, Evernote or Microsoft OneNote or Notion, you can actually import all of your notes into your new Obsidian vault when you start setting it up. However, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to delete this image or delete this file. And so we can just start with a nice blank canvas. You can see there's absolutely nothing here. Now, the first thing I want to do is I actually want to set up the couple plugins that I use for Obsidian. There are core plugins, and then there's this concept of community plugins. Community plugins are the plugins that are hosted by the community. They're not officially made by Obsidian, however, they do add a lot of crazy functionality to Obsidian, which is why I recommend enabling them. Enabling community plugins, and then we can go browse. And there's a couple major ones that we want to install. The first one we want to install is Excalidraw. This is going to allow us to add images and diagrams to our Obsidian notes. This is really helpful, especially if you're in the engineering fields or the computer science fields, because you can draw diagrams of kind of the flow of information. And the way to install a Obsidian plugin is just click the install button and then click enable. We're also going to install Templater, which is going to allow us to create custom templates for our notes. So when we create a new note, it's automatically going to populate a note with all of our information. We're also going to go down and we are going to install Iconize, which allows us to add icons to like our folders and our notes, so we can kind of sort based on icon for like a quick glance sort of setup. We're also going to install OmniSearch, which is kind of just an enhanced version of searching. And then I actually saved a list of all of the plugins that we're going to install. And then we're also going to install these three right here. We're going to install Notebook Navigator, which is a improved version of the File Explorer, which is how you would access your notes in Obsidian. So we're going to enable the Notebook Navigator. We're not going to watch the video on it because we know how Notebook Navigator works. And the last thing we're going to install is something called Waypoint. Waypoint, which allows us to create what we call maps of content in Obsidian. And I'll show you how that works in just a second. So to start, we have our Notebook Navigator open. Now, there's many different ways people like to do their information. The most popular ones are to use the Dewey Decimal Library system, where everything kind of has its own unique numerical ID, very similar to like a library, where a library book might have something like 141.13, and then like that's the name, that's the unique identifier for the book or the article or whatever it may be. And then there's also a style called Oh my goodness, why can't I remember the name of it right now? It's very, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. But it's a note style that's very much dominated by being a very flat style. There's not that many folders. Zettelkasten, that's the name of it. The Zettelkasten system, which is designed by there not really being that many folders, and everything's kind of at one level. Now, that creates a very cluttered looking uh, desktop, obviously, a very cluttered looking vault. So I kind of like doing a mix of the two. And so what I like to do is I like to start by creating my folders. And the folders that I create are, first off, I create an inbox folder. Um, by default, the idea behind the inbox folder is that every single one of your notes, your files, whatever it may be, the inbox is where it automatically goes. When you create a note, it goes in the inbox folder, and then afterwards, once you've created the note, or once you've created several notes, you'll go into your inbox and you'll sort them into the correct categories. I then like creating a life folder, which is for any sort of notes that are related to life that aren't particularly related to schoolwork, related to my projects, related to any of my other main interests that I have a category for. Then I obviously have my school folder that I create, and then to go along with the school folder, to keep like my school notes very simplified and clean, I also add a school archive folder, which is where notes from like previous year's classes go. Like if you look at my university, you'll notice because this semester just ended for me, there's nothing in my university folder, but if I go to my university archive, you can see all of my notes from my previous semesters of classes. Additionally, I'm also going to create, I mean, realistically, this is all you would need for your basic setup. You have your inbox folder, your life folder, and your school folder. However, I also have a couple extra folders that I use. I create a projects folder to keep track of like all the different projects that I'm working on and creating and coding and whatever else it may be that I consider a project. And then I also have a writing folder, which is for like my poetry, creative writing, or blog posts. Once you have all of your folders created, you can actually right click and go over here to the change icon, the iconize, and you can create, you can set icons for each of these. And I'm just going to set a couple just so you can kind of see how it would look. I usually use like the sun for life, but you can also set the color for each of these. I usually set like so. So, you could have like your inbox be gray, life could be, a nice yellow. Let's set it to a nice yellow, actually. There you go. Now, once you have all of these, you're going to create one more folder and you're going to call it templates. In templates is where you're actually going to create your default note template that you're actually going to use when you're creating your notes. To do this, you're just going to click on the templates folder right here, and you can just click new note. And let's just give it a name. We'll just call it default template. Now, to create the default template, you have to create and insert something called YAML front matter, which is kind of the way Obsidian's able to create like sorting for your notes. The way to activate Obsidian so you can do that is you want to go down here to this little pencil icon and change this from where it says live preview, you want to click and set it to source mode. You can then insert 3 dashes, and it's going to create this little look right here, where there's 3 dashes above and 3 dashes below. Then, for every single one of your notes, you can add an input. Then you can create like the categories. So for example, I'm going to have a type, a date, and then let's also have a just for the example, we'll have a people note too. Once you've added like all of your default whatever you want to be information you want in your front matter, you can then go down here and turn it back on live preview, and you'll notice that it creates this little properties tab. This properties tab is actually how you're going to keep track of information. So for example, we could set type to note, date, we could just set to be today. Today is May 9th, 2026. And people, I'll say it's me, it's Matthew, Rebecca, and Jeremy, just for the example. And then we could start, writing. But because this is our template, we're actually going to want to leave all of these blank. And then once we do that, we can click on our settings icon. We're going to go over to templater. This templater, and you'll notice we have this little communities plugin tab now. We're going to click on templater, and this template folder location, we can just select our templates. Now, from here, what you're going to want is you're going to want to check this box that says trigger templater on new file creation. Once you do that, you're going to want to go down here to where it says folder templates, enable folder templates. Folder, you want this to be the /. You want to click the /. What that does is it tells Obsidian that anytime a new note is created anywhere in the database, you want to use our default template. And once we have that, I can then go over here to like inbox, and if we create a new note, you'll notice it automatically just populated that for us, and we can type in our stuff. I'm just doing this as an example, and then here is my first note, and then if we went to create a second note, we could then you notice it resets all the properties, and we have a second note we can use. And there we go. Here's my second note. Once we have this all situated, we can then start doing the linking process. Now, the linking process, typically, if we go look at my actual Obsidian Vault as an example, you'll notice all of these individual lines, each one actually relates to a piece of information. So in this vault, for example, anything that's green indicates a tag, blue represents different categories. The categories are color matched to what it is. So anything that's purple is actually writing, anything that pink is stuff that I'm learning, etc. Now, the way Obsidian handles this is we actually use little hashtags. You'll notice I have down here tags writing / poetry. To add this to our examples template, we're just going to click this little add property thing, and we see we have a little tags thing now. Now, the way tags work is you can create a tag just by giving it a name, such as, example. Now, this note, as you can see over here, has been tagged with example. But you'll notice in my vault, I sometimes have tags with subtags in it. Like, for example, I have this domain tag, but then in the domain, there's a tag for each different type of studying I've done. The way you do those is you do the name of the name of the original tag, then you'll do a slash, and you can do the actual sub tag, and there you go. Now we have our second tag right there. And if we were to go look, you can see we have our notes are popping up now, and we can start connecting them. And the lines, remember, are when tags are linked together in your notes setup. Additionally, when we are going through and setting this up, you might have noticed we added this OmniSearch thing. OmniSearch is, quite literally just an enhanced way to search through your files. And you can search based on what's in the note, based on the tags of the note, based on the content of the note. It's a much more better version of the default search in the Obsidian. Additionally, we also have in our templates, we have this Excalidraw. To set up, and when you do Excalidraw, we have our, let's go actually to one of our example notes we have over here. Here's my first note. And if we were to do Control and P, we're going to open up the command palette. If we were to type in Excalidraw, we can go Excalidraw, and let's go create a new drawing. And first off, you're going to get flashbanged by Excalidraw, because Excalidraw is by default in light mode. But then you can, draw your little flow diagram, and I'm just drawing a, lovely little picture. We'll draw a, I don't know what I'm drawing. I'm just kind of drawing stuff here. But once we have our picture created, we can go over here to the control palette again, and we can go Excalidraw, and now we're going to have an embedded drawing. There's the drawing we just created, and now that drawing is in our note, and it actually updates in real time. Like if I were to add a circle, you'll notice it's going to also update over here. So, for example, and one of the ways I use Excalidraw quite a lot actually is when I'm in my projects. You'll notice here, we'll look at this one. You'll notice I actually use Excalidraw to draw diagrams of my coding projects so I can see how my coding projects will look. And then finally, the biggest way to make this work is earlier I mentioned this concept of maps of content. That is why we installed Waypoint on our system. The way we can start setting up a map of content is we want to right click on one of the folders we've created, such as life. We're going to click new note. We're just going to call it the same name as our folder. And we're going to delete this crap because this is going to serve as our map of content. One other thing that we're going to have to do is we have to go over to Notebook Navigator. If I remember this setting correctly, it would be in Notebook Navigator. Of course, now I have to search through, every single one of the, thousands of options here because I need to make sure I can find the correct one. So give me just one quick second. Where is it? Default list mode, nope. Dang. Dang, I guess it's not in Notebook Navigator. That's a little annoying. Well, no matter. Right? Hold on. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I can't remember which one it is, but the process will still be the same. You just won't get this nice little where you can click on it and it will just take you to the note. But we're going to go here to, once we have our life note, you'll notice it's the same name as the name of our folder. We're just going to go in here and we're going to do 2% signs, and we're going to just type in waypoint. And then you'll notice it went from waypoint to begin waypoint, end waypoint. Now, what waypoint does is every time we create a note, it actually updates. It actually will update inside the life one as well. Now, you'll notice life now is creating these links, and we can click on these links to see our different notes. And if we were to go over to the graph view, you can also see those notes actually now have a link to each other. So this is how I can go and create these crazy maps and images of all of my different notes, because this one, if you click on writing, this is actually just the waypoint that I created. I just showed you how to create just at a much larger scale. Same with, for example, the knowledge. Here's all the knowledge stuff. And here is, let's go find one other big one. The projects one. See, same thing right here. Here's all the projects. I could click on one of these and it will take me right there. But obviously you'll notice we have a very bare bones setup right now with just some basic tags as well as our basic vaults. And I know that when I did my last Obsidian tour, I was talking about how I was actually using a little bit of a LLM script to help me kind of automatically tag my notes based on the context of them. I actually am currently doing a massive rewrite of that entire project. I'm not sure if I actually have the old, yeah, I don't have the old scripts saved, but I'm in the process of creating a new Obsidian auto tagging application or script that you'll be able to run that utilizes a small large language model. And once I finish creating it and kind of push it to live so people can run it, I'll have a link for it in the description of this video. But all you need to do to really start getting going with Obsidian is just enable those couple plugins, and then as you can see, you'll have your setup going, no problems at all. But that's kind of how I set up Obsidian and create my Obsidian vault. And this is kind of how that Obsidian vault can expand over time to really help you start understanding and seeing how all the different information you're learning is interconnecting with each other. Okay, so I did also want to make one other quick clarification when it comes to Obsidian, and that is Obsidian by default does not actually save your notes in the cloud. They actually don't like collecting information about you, so you can either pay for them to use the built-in Obsidian syncing utility, which is about $30 a year if I remember correctly, which in my opinion is very good. Obsidian's a very small team. There's actually only 4 people on the team, and they make such a wonderful product for all of us. But if you don't want to pay $30 a year for Obsidian Sync, there is a way you can self-host it using a service such as GitHub or Codeberg or Forjago. That's a little bit more in depth than I want to go for this tutorial because that's more kind of in the customization and fine-tuning slash power guru side of Obsidian. But if people are interested in a quick tutorial on how to set it up, let me know in the comments section and I will consider making a video for that. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace.